I think the perception matters. The first thing my mum did after that was, "Hey Mehdi, your Ethereum is legal now." So I think this creates this. I think more than flows, I think it's also about perception.
On my screen, right? Because I've got it. I've got split screen. We're all stacked up on top of each other, and Johnny's on layer one, Medi's on
Yeah.
layer two, and I'm
Nice.
layer three. So like you are definitely Ethereum at the bottom. Medi's base, and then I'm what's a layer three?
You're Shiba Inu's new layer 3, mate.
Yes, I'm Shiba.
That's what you are. Welcome to another episode of the Deal Flow podcast. I'm your host as ever, Mixed Race Magic, Chief Editor at BSCN. With me today are regular guests, Kamran of MH Ventures, but also the founder of BSCN, and Mehdi, who is Head of Investment and Partnerships at Animoca Brands. How are we doing today, boys?
Very well, thank you very much, Johnny, for asking.
GM.
Nice. And you know it's got to start off with a disclaimer, so I'll throw that in there. This is a podcast. It is not financial advice or intended to constitute financial advice in any way. We'll mention tokens, we might give price predictions, we'll talk about our early project bets, we might even talk about our own personal portfolios. Please don't take anything as advice. It's all flippant, it's all in jest. Please, please, please be aware of that. I think this week there's really no shortage of good topics for us to eat into. I think the one that we want to kick things off with is probably the elephant in the room, which is Ethereum ETFs, right? Obviously approved on Thursday. It came at like 10 p.m. UK time, so that was definitely a late night with a cup of tea for me, watching those press releases and keeping an eye on the SEC website. But it came as a shock Thursday. If you'd asked me the Sunday before, when's it going to be approved? I would have said 2025, 2026. We've had court cases galore, right, against Consensus, Uniswap, and so many other parties, often related around ETH. So the backdrop was all very much, no, it's not going to happen. It's not going to be a repeat of BTC ETFs. We're going to be waiting a while here. But then on Monday, the first thing that happened, and this is kind of the saga as it played out. The first thing that happened is Eric Balchunas and James Seyfarth, who are those sort of like very, very well respected Bloomberg ETF analysts that predicted Bitcoin ETFs basically to the day. They turned around changing their approval odds from 25% up to 75%, basically saying, and it was very, very nondescript. They basically just said, we've heard whispers that it's going to happen this week, so we're going to increase our odds. Then I think literally less than an hour later, the SEC comes out with a public notice requesting that the ETF hopefuls like BlackRock, Fidelity, all the rest of it, they submit their 19B4 forms at an accelerated rate. I've forgotten what the exact timeline was, but it was basically like, come on, guys, if you want it to happen, let's get it in quickly. And then obviously Thursday, it was VanEck's official deadline. They were the first applicant, 23rd of May. We knew that the SEC had to at least say something, even if that was a no, sorry, fuck off, wait till 2025. We knew that something was going to come out, and it was an approval. Now, we had a massive, massive run up. I think it was like the biggest single day price jump for ETH that we'd had in years and years and years, definitely for the last few cycles in the wake of Monday's news. But when the ETFs were actually approved, we had very, very little. We had, it definitely felt like a bit of a buy the rumor, sell the news, even though the rumor had only come sort of, 3 or 4 days before that. Bit underwhelming. And I wonder to what extent it was because the ETH ETFs weren't actually ready to start trading immediately after. So, Bitcoin ETFs come through and the inflows for the first month or so were absolutely incredible. So I guess my first question to you guys, and I definitely have my own sort of opinions, not advice around it. Are ETF flows, when they do eventually get launched, are they going to be anywhere near Bitcoin ETFs? And my intuition is no, we'd be lucky to get 25 to 30% of the inflows that we've seen to Bitcoin ETFs. What do you guys think?
I think the perception matters. The first thing my mum did after that was, "Hey Mehdi, your Ethereum is legal now." So I think this creates this. I think more than flows, I think it's also about perception. Like a lot of folks will see this as kind of like, okay, there's a future here, and that has a network effect and spillover of its own. So I think we can all speculate on what the flows will be, but I think it opens up a door for higher, like loads of imagination, and kind of is a victory for the whole ecosystem. So things developing on Ethereum as well, I think, will benefit from from this news. I also feel the
Yeah.
TAM of Ethereum is way higher in the very, very long term than Bitcoin.
So you think the TAM of, and by TAM you mean like the potential capital that could flow into it, you think that's bigger for Ethereum than Bitcoin?
Yes.
Nice. Well, I'm glad to hear that because my bags consist basically entirely of ETH and nothing else. So I'm glad. But I think that's a pretty
I would
controversial
say
opinion, right?
smart contract platform more than let's just like saying Ethereum. So I think this will
Yeah.
lead to another question, but I feel like the TAM of a smart contract platform is much larger than digital gold.
It's like the TAM of the internet versus the TAM of gold, I guess is like
Yes.
one way that I would kind of articulate it. But yeah, I mean, I love that opinion. But so you're very much in the camp that thinks there will come a point in time, be it in a year or 20, where ETH will flip Bitcoin for market cap. You think that's going to happen?
A smart contract platform will, yeah. It
Yeah.
could be I don't know, Solana,
People have been saying
but one of these.
people have been saying this for years though. Like, there's going to be decoupling. Somewhat,
Yeah, I remember 2021, the flippening. When's that going to happen?
the flipping in, decoupling, all of that, and it still hasn't happened. I think my take is that I think Bitcoin will always be dominating. It will always be number one. I don't see anything taking over. I think as the industry grows, Bitcoin inevitably grows with it and will always be the mover of that. I don't think we get a decoupling. Of course, things will get
I mean, there is
detached
also,
slightly, but I don't think it will be a massive, like a massive decoupling. But go on, what were you saying, Johnny?
you could also, but also Bitcoin is getting its own smart contract ecosystem now. Like how nascent that is and how long it's going to take to, get taken really, really seriously from at least a consumer or developer point of view, don't know. But there is going to
Even
come
if
a
you look
point.
at it, Johnny, even if you look at it, the ecosystem that's being built on top of BTC, on top of L2, what are they? Like a lot of them are doing EVM, some of them are even doing SVM, some of them are
It's like
doing
a
Move.
battleground.
Yeah,
Mate,
so
you've got to, you and your virtual machine obsession. We had this penciled in for later, Mehdi. Come on. We're talking about ETH ETFs here. But nah, it's a really good point. And like the way that I see it is that because so Solana obviously very, very seriously ties to, one specific virtual machine, same as Ethereum and same as obviously the Move ecosystem projects as well. Bitcoin is like a carte blanche now. Because it doesn't have that sort of native foundational architecture that those other smart contract specific L1s have. It's almost going to be like a battleground, I think, in terms of like, will developers end up, what will become the dominant even just what will become the dominant language on Bitcoin, I think is a question on itself, and it's probably a multi-billion-dollar bet in and of its own right at this point.
I would also, so just talking about the price predictions, I don't, I think there's two things. Yeah, of course, I don't think they're going to get the inflows as much as Bitcoin has. I think people still see Bitcoin as as everyone says, store of value. So people, I think it's an easier hold. I think the only downfall is, and I guess this is how crypto or the community has shifted as decentralization, and now we have an ETF because they wanted an ETF. They think that's the only thing that's going to bring, back the bull run. But then now we don't get the burn, right. Like Ethereum has this burn built in. So now with the ETF, there's no, we're not burning coins anymore, right?
So the burn mechanism was introduced in the London hard fork in I think August 2021, and all that meant was it effectively meant that of gas fees, of transaction fees, a certain percentage was burnt, and I think it's quite a low percentage. I think it's like 30 million, but it's a transaction based burn mechanism. So there was a big story the other day, obviously before all the Ethereum ETF hype came in, when things were a bit suppressed, that said actually Ethereum is becoming deflationary again because for a long time after the London hard fork, a lot of which was driven by NFTs. Ethereum had some real long term deflationary pressure. Like, do you remember that? Do you remember the other? I mean, like, it seems like so long ago now, but do you
Other
remember
side.
the other side launch from Yuga Labs? That was like the single most Ethereum burnt in a single day or something. But a combination of the fact that transaction activity is just lower, partly facilitated by layer twos and what they're doing, but also the Denkin upgrade itself in terms of how it reduced transaction fees pretty much across the board has really lessened the deflationary pressure. But I don't think, but because it's an activity-based burn mechanism, I don't think necessarily the ETH ETF should have any impact, unless you're saying that it's gonna, because there'll be so much Ethereum locked inside the ETFs that people won't be using it to spend on transaction fees and stuff, is maybe a case. But it is, I think, it's a transactional burn mechanism as of August 2021. So hopefully, I mean, fingers crossed, it won't have too much of an impact. Partly because Ethereum supply probably, couldn't really hack it at the moment with the Denkin upgrade and all the rest of it. But to go back to what we were saying, just in one sentence each, can you guys give a 2024 all-time high Ethereum price prediction? And we've already disclaimed, so no one's going to take it too seriously. But if you had to pick a number to the nearest $100, what would you say?
I'm gonna say $5,000.
That's so bearish.
What? It's
That's so
2024.
bearish.
What we've got? What are we? We're in May.
You're trying to
So
fund my
6
bags.
months.
yeah, 5K
Yeah, we've got
is.
more than half the year.
I just don't see it doing a 2x from here. Like, I really don't. Like,
Really?
what was all-time high this year? 4,000 and
It's
4,200 or
just
something?
toppled 4,000.
Yeah.
All time high 4,700.
But that was back in 2021. I think this year it hasn't really pushed much above 4,000, if at all. I think 8K. I don't think 8K is unreasonable.
In 6 months?
Yeah, in 6 months. Like, Bitcoin.
Those
doubled
days
its
have
price
gone in
less-
crypto.
Johnny, I need
man.
the same breakfast as you had earlier today. I need that hopium. I need
Well,
that hopium.
I didn't. No, but it's got the market cap is what, a quarter of Bitcoin, maybe a third, something like that. And Bitcoin. I mean, like, let me whack up the price chart, right? So
Yeah, so Bitcoin is 1.4 trillion. Ethereum
Yeah.
is 400 billion right now.
yeah. So if Bitcoin is 1.4 right now, when was it last 700 billion? And it was last 700 billion it crossed above 700 billion in November 2023. So in 6 months, Bitcoin's market cap doubled. So why couldn't Ethereum's? You guys laughed at me, told me I'm eating opium for breakfast, but I think it's
So,
feasible.
Not in 6 months.
I don't think it's 6 months. This cycle's been really odd, right? Yeah, we've seen Bitcoin move and we've seen a few altcoins do bits, and
Yeah.
meme coins are doing the biggest thing that's going on. I just don't see how we really been seeing a lot of new money inflow. I don't think we've seen a substantial amount of new money coming in, is one. And then two, even users like retail coming in, I don't think we've seen that. Retail users are going to be like the biggest pusher of Ethereum doing a 2x, I would say. And we just haven't seen that yet. So I don't see that happening in the next 6 months. And then we can take into equation of what's actually going on in the real world and how shitty the economy is and stuff. People would say that the economy is good, but I don't think it is. So I honestly don't see Ethereum doing a 2x from here. I'm sorry, Johnny. You just have to keep holding a bit longer.
Right, well, we're going to have to get this bit cut out of the video then, aren't we?
No, but I also don't, like,
like that.
personally, I know you guys said, oh, Ethereum's a good hold or whatever. Personally, I would rather have conviction on another product. I don't know. Can't name any right now, but a product that I believe is going to be, is a good company that I think is needed. And it's just a way lower market cap at FDV and put our money in that and have high conviction in it. Rather than having my conviction in Ethereum. Because at max, 2x. I'd rather 10x my money in the space of 3 to 4 or 5 years than 2x my money in 3 to 4 or 5 years.
You're not going to lose you're very unlikely to lose all of your money betting on Ethereum, right? It's just a risk. It's a sharp. It's a risk reward balance, right? Like, and for me, I'm so risk averse that for a cryptocurrency investor, right? For a cryptocurrency investor, I'm so risk averse that actually the prospect of having a steadier store of value in Ethereum that might only do a 2x or so this cycle.
So do you stake your Ethereum as well then or not?
No. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Like, I don't trust it. I don't have 32, so I can't set up my own validator, and I don't trust it.
Johnny, I'm assuming you don't take participation in private deals, huh?
I maybe with like a 1 to 2K check, But also, right, so I really only hold Ethereum, but it also means that from a journalistic point of view, I can talk about whatever the hell I want. There's never any conflict of interest. I never need to worry about there being a conflict of interest. Having said that, I did also just hold ETH before I was working back in the media side when I was still in VC and stuff. But I think that when I was working in VC and stuff like that, it was almost a value add to have someone that's so risk averse and so cynical of every different mechanism. But yeah, okay, it means that I'm unlikely to do 100x on my ETH holdings. I agree.
Okay, let me ask
You
you.
just need
Yeah.
a taste of 100x.
I
Have
I
you had
did
a
it.
taste of 100x, Johnny?
Even a
Or a
10x though
10x
from
or
here.
15x?
Do you even see Ethereum doing a 10x from here? Like honestly saying the next 5 years, do you think
Yes,
Ethereum does a 10x from
hands
here?
down.
Oh my god.
I think so.
Really?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
So basically, you're saying it becomes
It's not financial
4.5
advice.
trillion. So
I think that's
basically,
feasible.
market cap of
You were just telling me that Bitcoin's going the smart contract ecosystem's going to flip Bitcoin,
I
and that
never
would be a
said it's
4x.
because Ethereum does 10x. It could be a mix of both, right? Like
Yeah, for
Bitcoin
sure.
contracting, Ethereum growing in size. I see it becoming a trillion or 1.5 trillion, like something like Microsoft over the period of time. But
Fair,
that's like
fair.
4 or 5x.
But I think you're also going to see more of it being locked away, and that there's going to be bigger supply shocks to Ethereum
But
than
that's
people realize.
momentarily. So this is the thing about commodity, like it's cyclical, right? So you might have, let's say, 3x before like 5 days, 6 days, rather than like, let's say, how Apple or Microsoft are at, let's say, 2 trillion for like years. So I think there's a difference.
Yeah. No, I mean, I get it, and obviously every person that I speak to like pushes back, like, why aren't you FOMOing into tiny meme coins that are going to do 100x? It's also a time thing. It is also a time thing. Like having a position that I almost treat like property, where I'm not going to touch it for X number of years, and I have no intention of touching it for X number of years. I think also gives me a peace of mind, right, to focus on making money and stuff in other aspects, right?
I think my mental model for the space is everything is a call option. So I think Cam might also share this opinion, right? Like my view of the whole industry is a call option. Whether are we taking a call option, liquid market or private market? And thing with call option is we're betting on where the next mass adoption comes in. So we're okay for that call option to go to zero, but what we're actually looking for is like 10, 15, 100 X's and bet on that next mass adoption. I think the thing with Ethereum is it already has some sort of adoption. So the call option for it to be massively in the money is limited, whilst the downside risk is there. Let's say you have Solana, you have Monad coming, you have Berachain. So so I feel like risk adjusted, it's still difficult to.
But in terms of like people, I think people underestimate the safety and the resilience of the Ethereum ecosystem. Insofar as like I think it happened a couple of months ago, but like L2s collectively they reached a point where they had a bigger TVL than every other non-native project in the ecosystem combined, and that critical mass, like
But
I know that
do
many.
TVL matter? Like if you're in the private market, you'll realize TVL don't matter. A lot of
No,
projects come to you.
I know, but in
I'm
terms
like,
of
oh, can
resilience,
you
right?
invest in us?
I
We'll
get it,
let
I
you
get it.
invest if you
But
if
but
you
here's
bring
my
TVL.
thesis.
I think TVL is the most retarded metric out there. It just doesn't mean anything. I think capital efficiency and volume are better in my opinion.
Fine, fine. But my thesis is this, right? Is that so like I've done 100x's before, but only on the institutional side, only in the seat of a VC. And it's partly because it's easier to do because you get in at low valuations. And this is the truth. You guys are the bad guys, everybody knows. But equally, like I think it only makes sense to make those bets if you can spread them across a portfolio of probably dozens of projects. And as an individual, I don't have the capacity to be managing those positions, entering them, exiting, right, staying on top of every single one. Whereas a VC with that's managed to build a team of maybe 5 to 10 people, if not more, suddenly does have the capacity to be managing that. I think the chances of me doing 100x are low. And I think the chances of me doing 100x and exiting at the right time and managing that position are even lower as an
That's fair.
individual.
So
That's fair.
So I'm not saying that you should never invest in anything other than Ethereum. I'm saying that for my personal lifestyle, which mostly revolves around doing stuff for BSCN, I think ETH is the only one that really gives me peace of mind in the background, if that makes sense.
yeah, no. So I think your way of investing is like if you look at the stock market, your way of investing is preferred to go and invest in the stock market because there's not as volatile. You can get stocks that just constantly go up, and they're good holds, they're good companies, they're established, and they are going to do well through the course of the next 10 years. And then you look at crypto and something like Ethereum, that is a good hold and is safe to hold. There's not, I wouldn't say there's that many of them. Of course, there is some. We can name a few: Ethereum, Solana, Bitcoin, etc. But there's not many of them. What I would say to you is maybe you need to diversify your portfolio slightly into other blue chips that in crypto to get those 10x's, because Ethereum isn't going to.
This is the thing.
In the next 5 isn't doing a 10x. That's just my preference, and I believe you can have a better play
but
with something safer
Ethereum
as well.
Ecosystems may well do. Yeah, certain Ethereum ecosystem projects or L2s may do. And that, I think, if I was going to take the time, and I really, at the moment, Cam, I don't really have the time to be doing it.
Yeah.
But if I did, I think that's probably the way that I would go. But equally, the truth is, from a personal point of view, I'm less advanced in my career than you guys are. And I don't necessarily have like the holdings, and I can't necessarily take a serious proportion of my portfolio to then sort of inject into other altcoins. It would be, a much, much smaller amount. And also, I think my wife would kill me. I'd have to run it by her and all the rest of it. I think that's a genuine concern. But for sure, I would do. And I think, if suddenly like the world fell out from underneath me and I just had like, who are you laughing at? My wife would kill me. Because I've spent so long explaining to her all the merits of Ethereum and stuff like that if I suddenly FOMO'd out,
That's definitely not an unbiased conviction.
Mate, it's a serious concern. It's a serious concern. She would kill me because I've spent the whole time explaining to her why Ethereum is like ultrasound money.
Did you read the white paper to her?
No, the white paper's huge, bro. Like the Bitcoin one. Next question. Do we think that Solana and XRP ETFs are actually going to happen? And for me, the answer is absolutely no. They're in terms of the Howey test and how security they look like, they just couldn't look any more like securities. And it's almost like a spectrum as to where they fall. So like Bitcoin at one end of the spectrum, very much not looking like a security whatsoever, like with a founder that could be dead for all we know. Then Ethereum in the middle that has a foundation, some expectation of profit, but ultimately is probably in the gray area. Then you get to something like Solana or XRP, and it suddenly looks very much like a security.
So, just going back to Ethereum though. So the staked Ethereum, is that known as a security or not now?
So this is the thing, right? And I watched a bit of a podcast with James Seyfarth, one of those Bloomberg ETF analysts, and apparently there's some expectation. And this was, bear in mind, this was a couple of weeks before even it came out that they were going to approve spot Ethereum ETFs. Was the idea that the SEC would try and distinguish between spot ETH and staked ETH as security. So the idea being that, how familiar are you guys with the Howey test?
I've heard of it, but I don't know it in depth.
Effectively, it's a series of questions. It was proposed ages ago, like mid 20th century, like way out of date, and that's a big argument against the SEC. But it effectively decides whether an asset's a security, and it's effectively, from what I understand, which again is very limited understanding, is that if investors invest with the expectation that there's a third party that is working to deliver profit on behalf of that asset, then it's very much a security. So something like Bitcoin, like there is no centralized party that's trying to drive the value of Bitcoin or develop the ecosystem. You have some core contributors, but it's ultimately open source software. Then you sort of move along the spectrum and you have the Ethereum Foundation, which is a bit ephemeral, very raised above, which is why the whole eigenlayer thing is a massive big deal and a controversy. But then you have something like Solana, which still has, massive VC positions in it. It's still vesting aggressively. It has a not-for-profit foundation, but the members of that not-for-profit are very much going to be, it's an understanding that they're going to be looking to drive profit and value.
Solana was announced to be a security, if I'm correct, going back last year, I think.
I think in certain court cases, right. Yeah.
So where does that leave that with? So how does that get an ETF approval, or can it still get an ETF approval then? Being known as a security?
I think, again, getting into like very sort of discussion of legal frameworks and stuff like that. I think security, if it gets dubbed as security, it will make it much harder for approval. But you're right in that there are court cases where it's already been dubbed as security. I think one's against exchanges, right, for conducting unregistered security sales. But equally, there've been court cases that have flipped. So the XRP case was probably the most prominent example of that, where actually it got decided, I believe, that it wasn't a security in spite of claims that it was. So there's certainly plenty of room for things to flip flop around and for cases to be made on either side of the aisle. But I think all of that brunt work is still very, very much to be done for any altcoins in a way that they're not necessarily for Ethereum. Aside from when you get into the prospect that staked ETH could be considered a security, if that makes sense.
So, and then why is XRP in there as a potential one?
I've forgotten exactly who it was, but there was some expert that came out and said, you know, could we I think we could be looking at XRP and Sol ETFs as sort of the next in that train of altcoin ETFs, which I think does make sense in terms of like, because obviously you're not going to have a stable coin ETF, obviously. So in terms of like the size of those altcoins and the market cap, those do seem like the most feasible. I mean, like, I don't think it's going to be BNB Chain or DOT or ADA or anything like that. I think those are probably the most feasible candidates at this point. But I still think that they're years away, like absolutely years away. Like I think 2025 is extremely optimistic for Solana and XRP ETFs.
Okay. I don't know. I honestly couldn't say because
It's a regulatory one.
because
Ultimately, it would have to get like a
because
James
like
safe.
I don't understand the point of you get an ETF approval on Ethereum, but if your Ethereum is staked, it's potentially a security. I don't get that how you split those two up.
Because
They're
you've
the same.
entrusted it with a third party.
But that's
So I'm
anything.
guessing
I can
that
go
it's
and earn if I can go and I don't know, put it in as
So
an LP.
I
Is that
think
now a security then?
I think you can make a case to say that like an STETH type token would be a security. Because you're holding that token on the expectation that the validator, i.e. the centralized third-party service, is going to work to deliver you profit or yield, I think is probably the argument that they go down. Having said that, I haven't a Scooby-Doo and I haven't spoken to the experts about it, but that to me, surface level makes some degree of sense. But I'm sure people will laugh at me in the comments for sure. But it does sort of lead us on to one that I do think is worth spending a little bit of time on, even if it's just 5-10 minutes, which is the eigenlayer controversy. So what I'm really talking about here is the eigenlayer controversy with those two researchers taking on token incentivized positions despite being at the Ethereum Foundation. But actually, to me, the eigenlayer controversy goes way back to when they announced their token in airdrop, because that was the point at which, you know, having loved eigenlayer and everything that they do and the benefits they're bringing to not just the Ethereum ecosystem, but the industry as a whole, that was the point at which I started to question their motives and how able to execute those guys were and stuff like that. Just sort of like the lack of acumen around, like, I just don't understand how they could not have seen the backlash that was coming when they announced their token details with the allocations and all the rest of it. And it did seem, and again, it's just an opinion that I've seen floating around on social media and all the rest of it, don't want to slam anyone, but there was a lot of like greed accusations there. So that was sort of where the issue started. That was a few weeks ago, which means that, and I think that because there was so much controversy around their token drop, that's why it was such a big deal that when Justin Drake and one other Ethereum Foundation researcher, they came out and they announced that they had taken advisory positions and token allocations with Eigenlayer, but they only admitted it in response to, you know, Kobe. Kobe was talking to Vitalik Buterin, and he seemed to have insider information and brought it up and asked whether it was an issue, which then triggered those two researchers to come out and admit effectively that they had incentives, right, conflicts of interest with other Ethereum ecosystem restaking projects. But interestingly, I think it was when Justin Drake came out and admitted his position, he said that there were two advisors and one investor in Eigenlayer. And the investor in Eigenlayer, who is clearly part of the Ethereum Foundation, has yet to come out. So they haven't admitted it yet. So potentially there's still a conflict of interest there. Then you had the executive chairman or the executive director of the Ethereum Foundation came out with a statement publicly saying, we appreciate the issues, we understand that they are issues, and we're working on an internal policy to make sure it doesn't happen again. So my question to you guys, and I think I already know what you'll say, is should Ethereum Foundation researchers be allowed to take token allocations, advisory token allocations at projects that are so pivotal to the Ethereum ecosystem like that? Should that even be allowed?
In my opinion, if so, similar to investment, right? Let's say you're writing a research report and you have invested in something. Uh, as long as you give the disclosure, I think it's fair thing to do. And I think advisors do bring a lot of value, especially on the early start of things. I think over here the concern was since the advisor himself criticize some of the risk of staking and restaking, and how eigenlayer could be a risk to Ethereum. I think what people are worried about is that objectivity might be compromised. But if we kind of remove that from the equation, if we just philosophically ask whether there should be advisors in crypto, or or whether equity should be given to advisor, I think it's a common practice globally. Even businesses do that. If you're helping with go to market, or if you're helping with getting some business done or partnership, I think it's an easy hack. Easy hack, especially on the early stages.
It's easy
And
money for some people, for
and
sure.
even public projects that are publicly listed, they get consultant all the time. So instead of giving advisory, they're just giving them fiat. But sometimes with startup, they are fiat poor but token or equity rich. So I think it's a smart way to kind of leverage your existing resources to expand. So I'm yeah, I think it should be done. I think the best thing to do would have been, okay, allowing him to invest, but at a slightly better terms for his advice. So the interests align. But then what happens is it's kind of forcing him to actually compromise his objectivity, because right now he can say certain things as an advisor, and also remove himself. But if he has invested, he has more skin in the game. So I think it becomes tricky. But my stance is, all in all, I think this industry is okay with advisory. I think
So
it's a business hack.
advisory 100%, and it's like really really useful to early stage projects to be able to incentivize someone with network or experience or whatever it is. The difficulty for this one is the fact that it's the Ethereum Foundation. So I heard someone, I think in a tweet they wrote it, but basically analogizing. So if you think of the Ethereum ecosystem as kind of the nation state in which a lot of these different, call them businesses but really protocols, they operate, and you think of the Ethereum Foundation effectively as the government of that, in terms of they control the ecosystem, they control the rules and regulations within that ecosystem. You wouldn't necessarily allow a government employee or an elected politician to come on as an advisor for a for-profit company. They do, obviously, we know that happens, but that's a big whole scandal and controversy in and of itself. And I think that's the difficulty. Because they're deciding effectively the direction of the Ethereum network, of course they could manufacture that to suit their invested project, so to speak. So advisory allocations, I think 100%, it's a massive bonus to the ecosystem. The question is whether Ethereum devs or Ethereum researchers should be allowed to take them on, for sure.
This is not the first time, they've taken advisory positions or made an investment. It's not the first time it happens. Do I believe that it's wrong? I think that it's not wrong. I think it should be allowed. However, what I will say is that there shouldn't be, from a journalist perspective, that there shouldn't be any compromise of, if they need to cover it in whatever format, is it's bad or good, they should be allowed to do that, and that shouldn't jeopardize their advisory position or what. From a journalistic or research point of view, they should be allowed to do that. But assuming that they're taking an advisory position is based on that they like the project and they believe that what they're building is something for the future. But yeah, I don't see the issue with them doing that, because they're building in the Ethereum Foundation. Why shouldn't they? In a way, if they're going to be helped, go on.
I mean, there is just a small part of me that thinks the only reason there's been so much controversy and it's blown up into such a big deal is because it is eigenlayer specifically, which is just
I
such a
think
big,
so too. I think
yeah,
so too.
100%. Because of its size and how significant it now is in the industry, but also because of the controversies that happened before. I think if everyone had been very, very happy with the airdrop and all the rest of it, I think potentially it wouldn't have been such a big deal. I mean,
I think
people
it would have
still taken
happened
issue with
anyway,
it.
just because, like you said, just because how big the project is. That's what any big project that gets a
It
lot
poses
of.
a risk, and it poses
Yeah.
a risk, right?
It's a
It
disease
poses
of
a
that.
risk to Ethereum. So I think people were concerned, and I think a lot of Ethereum folks are idealistic as well. Like, they have their ethos, they have their ideology. So it kind of made sense. I think this would have happened. What I really liked was all of this was disclosed and happened on Twitter. So I think
Yeah.
this kind of improves the situation. I think it would have been a bad look if this was done secretly.
I just had a kind of side question, because Mehdi just said he's glad it happened on Twitter. Do you think there'll be a time where we'll say we're glad this happened on Farcaster?
Good question. Good question. I haven't started using Bobcast yet, but I was thinking about experimenting when I have time. Could happen. I don't know. I just feel it's a bit retarded that project with 100k DAUs, MAUs can raise at a billion and raise
Oh
150
my
million.
goodness. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
I
bit
saw this.
retarded, especially if it's an equity play, 100 like a billion with like
Yeah.
raising with the Dune analytics. I think
You
it's
you know what's going to happen? It's
I
going to be
wouldn't
an
have backed it at a
open
billion.
sea 2.0.
Maybe. Maybe, yeah. No, but OpenSea was 13.4.
34
And
point, but it was different. It was OTC, it was peak bull market, and
Yeah.
they were the biggest NFT marketplace. And at that time,
They
um,
fumbled so hard. They fumbled
no,
so
but I
hard.
had the I
To
had
let that.
the founders exited anyway on secondary. So
yes, I heard they exited at 500 million. But all these are like hearsay on Twitter. Um,
Yeah.
but again, I feel like OpenSea is something I still use. I still haven't used Farcaster, so I don't know.
Fair. Fair play. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. Like when OpenSea was raising, and it was early 2022. They announced it. They did have like I didn't question that. I mean, I thought that valuation was a little steep, but I was like, it's bull market times. They're the biggest in a niche that's expected to grow. Kind of get it. Farcaster is. I saw some tweet basically slamming. I think it was A16Z saying that they're playing a management fee game, where they just want to take in as much capital. Because they're such a big VC at the moment and they find it so difficult to move. It's like steering a cruise ship. They want to pocket the management fees, right?
Maybe
Because
they should play the liquid markets. And same goes for Paradigm. There's so many good opportunities. Maybe buy a bit more Sui and Near
uh,
and Aptos and Ethereum. Johnny, they could be buying Ethereum. It can
and
10x.
they could stake it as well.
nice, real nice. Thanks, guys. Mehdi, you were saying about the virtual machine endgame and how we see that playing out. I can give context there, or if you do, then
Yeah, so I've been like speaking with a lot of VCs and speaking with a lot of devs, and I've been like thinking about this question a lot. So I kind of feel like my thesis is EVM, SVM, and Move. These will be the three virtual machine consensus. There won't be anyone that will be as big. And I've been thinking about this. Like, if you kind of think about it logically, anything in order for the dev to move from an ecosystem apart from these three, there has to be 10x improvement, and I don't see it happening anytime soon, because Move was 10x improvement on EVM and 5x improvement on SVM. I just don't see 10x improvement across another virtual machine
yeah,
apart from these three, right? So it's very difficult, and devs have their tooling. They'll have to learn coding, so they're gonna be just sticky around these. And another thing is exchanges also have operations. They have to work on the like blockchain explorer. There's a lot of back end work that goes on as well in terms of listing. So I kind of feel like there's a consensus building that these will be the three virtual machine. So it has a huge implications for funding, right? 40% of Web3 funding went to network, not infrastructure, networks, L1s, L2s, and all of that.
yeah,
So I think that there will be a huge implication there. And I think you'll also be observing this trend that we're not seeing a new L1 emerge with a new virtual machine. And what's happening right now is let's take these virtual environments and just start a L2 either on Solana, Bitcoin, or Ethereum. So I think that is a trend that will be happening rather than people starting a new L1 with a new virtual machine. There will be a bit more focus up the stack now.
yeah,
So we'll see potentially rather than seeing new L1s, we'll see L2s, or we'll be seeing maybe sector specific L1s, but not kind of innovating on the virtual machine side, but just like using either one of these three. So I think as an industry, we are settling on this, and I think that's a good news. That
So,
means there will be network effects and being gathered around these ecosystems.
but can EVM, SVM, and Move VM can they all coexist indefinitely? Do you see that as feasible?
I mean, even right now, there are the multiple programming languages. Um, just I think like there are multiple programming languages, whether it's Java, React, Python, that coexist and people are comfortable using, right?
Hmm.
So I think they can coexist.
But they often have different purposes, though. So, like Rust, for instance, is a very, very low level granular language, whereas Python
Yes,
is like super high level, very accessible, but
yes,
very, very slow calls.
yeah.
Is that how you see it with Move, EVM, SVM? Just the respective advantages will keep them.
I just feel like the devs have started using this. They learn about this. It takes them years to kind of specialize. Just will be
Yeah,
very difficult for them to move away unless there's a 10x improvement.
yeah.
So this is it. This is it. Unless there's something that brings 10x improvement. If there is something that brings 10x improvement, then I'm happy to be wrong.
Yeah, fair. That makes. I think we're also at a point now where maybe we weren't there 3 or 4 years ago, where the cross-chain infrastructure really does exist now to make things pretty smooth. Like the UI, the front end could definitely do with a lot of development, but fundamentally, like in terms of the actual efficiency, it kind of does exist now. Not prolifically across every little niche of the ecosystem, but it's a point now where different languages and different ecosystems coexisting does seem much more feasible than it did a few years ago, even. I don't know. Do we see a winner out of EVM, SVM, and MoveVM? I know we've spoken about them coexisting, but at the moment,
Three coexisting, very difficult to. I think there'll be like five, six big winners, and there'll be tailwind of like small sector specific or app specific chains. But general purpose L1s, I think there will be like three, four big ones, like
3 or 4
consolidating
big
around.
general purpose L1s, and I'm guessing
Yeah,
you're talking here. You're talking about Solana, Ethereum, and what else are you thinking about at the moment?
the few contenders, right? Like you have Sui, you have Aptos, you have Chain, you have Monad.
Yeah.
So
Do
there'll be
you
some
think?
consolidation around
Okay,
that.
so here's a question: do you think that those 3 or 4, right? So Sui, Aptos, Monad, all the rest of it. Do you think that they can coexist? Do you think that makes sense?
Even if they don't, they can. What's the worst that can happen? They've invested so much money. They have so many devs. They can move as L2 to maybe one of the bigger ecosystem. So I think there isn't a part where anybody loses. I think what they're going for is the prize money of being like Ethereum or Bitcoin, like internet matching internet money, which everybody uses. If they fail to do that, they can just complement by becoming L2, in my opinion.
I mean, we've seen some monolithic L1s from the 2020 era of already doing that. Like, I think CeeLo is a pretty clear example of what was meant to be a sort of consumer-facing L1 that ultimately has realized that probably its future is best served as an L2. So yeah, fair. That does make a lot of
Or
sense as a
maybe if
piece.
they don't want to become a L2 because of political reasons, because of the community, they can just start a sector specific. I think Near is going down that
Verticalized.
route. Yeah, yeah. So Near basically is focusing a lot more on AI and focusing on data availability.
Yeah.
Um, and we have already seen there was a new project that raised as L2 Plume as RWA. Then we had
Yeah.
Peak Network. Then we had Revolving Game the other day that wanted to like be a L1 with gaming focus. So I think so I think there will be some sort of consolidation if you can't become that global magic internet money. You can become a sector of that and carve a niche or become a L2. Um, but I feel like these are the three big virtual machines that I don't see any other kind of out competing them in next 10 years.
Fair
If that
play.
makes
I think that's
sense.
a pretty reasonable position to hold. Cam, what do you think? Is there a big winner here, or is that does that seem feasible to you?
I think I've I've always been a bit of a, like, say, Ethereum maxi for a long time.
Good man.
Um,
Good man.
so I've been an Ethereum maxi for a very long time. Then we saw, Sui, Aptos come around. I didn't really think that they were gonna get any traction, just because I just didn't believe people were gonna take the move language seriously, or we were going to be able to onboard that. That was me reflecting on, looking at Solana being using Rust, and there is Rust developers already out there in Web 2, and they already found it hard to adopt, Solana devs. So I was looking at the move ecosystem as like, okay, if Solana can't do it, how is the Aptos and Sui going to be able to do it? So I guess I was bearish on them. But then Solana, I've always liked. But then, kind of still thought Ethereum was always going to be the winner. But now seeing them evolve this cycle, let's say, that's really changed my thoughts. And I'm going to say I definitely believe that there is room for all three, and they will all, like Mehdi said, they will all coexist. I still do think that there's a developer shortage on both sides, being Solana and the Move ecosystem, that they need to ramp up them, bringing in developers to want to build, and I think that's like the hardest part. I think Solana's doing a better job, I would say, but I don't know the official numbers, and I haven't seen that for maybe 6 months now.
So I heard just like a word on programming languages. I heard a really, really interesting anecdote, and this was I think this was peak bear market. Someone was talking to me about it, but both Solana and Near launched almost identically. They were both scalability focused L1s in response to Ethereum congestion. They launched, I think, like 2 months apart on CoinList. Their mainnet launches were like very, very close together. I think Solana was like just ahead of Near on all of these. And they were both Rust based and very much competing for that small pool of Rust developers that were going to be willing to do blockchain stuff. And part of the reason, from what I'm told, that Solana did so well is because Near was European based project all over Europe and all the rest of it. Solana was very much a West Coast US SF type, it was named after a California beach. And that was ironically partly why they were able to bootstrap their ecosystem so well, is because geographically they were just located near more of the developers. Like in terms of poaching new grads that are really, really familiar with Rust and stuff, it just became a downhill battle compared to Near. So I think even like minutiae like that, stuff that as an investor I would very, very rarely consider, can have potentially a really, really big impact.
There were other reasons as well, right? Solana was just dead on focus on becoming the fastest chain, and that's it.
Yeah.
I feel like Near, in terms of their BD, has tiptoed around a little bit with different narratives. Right now, they're doing data availability, they're doing things with AI. Solana just was like Ethereum killer. That's it. Speed. Yeah, that's it. Nasdaq on chain. That was their motto. Still at it. But Near is another, again, not financial advice, another very strong project. I have big bags, and I think it's also a very novel architecture with sharding. So I think they have
Yes.
like multiple things going for. So I
Yeah.
think there is a little bit of mispricing there. But again, in terms of my desk getting deal flow, I'm not seeing many deals from Near ecosystem. Seeing a lot of account abstraction stuff from Near, but majority of the deals that are coming on are either on Solana, maybe Monad, maybe Berachain, maybe few L2s on Ethereum. And another interesting thing is nobody is building on Ethereum, building on L2s of Ethereum. So one issue, I think I've highlighted this before, is project when they're thinking about going Ethereum, they have like overload with choices. Oh, Blast, Arbitrum, Optimism, Polygon, IMX. Like with Solana or Near or Sui, it's simple. Like, okay, Solana, Sui, Aptos, done. Or Near, done.
So you can call a question for you, Mehdi, and maybe John as well. So you can call like Ethereum a blue chip. You can call Solana a blue chip. Would you then put Aptos, Sui, and or Near in the blue chip category, and not by its
Growth
market
story.
cap now,
Yeah.
or
I
in
would call
terms
them a
of
growth story.
okay.
I would say they're blue chips already for me.
So you would
It's
say
like
that
blue
holding
chip
them in your
growth story.
portfolio, there's more of upside, and they could go down 30-50%, but still in the long run, they're always going to
Yeah.
outperform.
Of course, there's more upside, but even ones like Near, like I know that even going. I mean, I've been out of the VC world for a good year or so now, but very, very few Near deals would come across my desk, and the ones that are always have some angle. But equally, Grayscale launched their Near Trust last week. Same with Stacks. Like there are these sort of like from an institutional perspective, they're getting this sort of blue chip status. This is if we just push away market cap for a minute. If we decide that every token above 5 billion is a blue chip, like forget that. If you're speaking like narratively, I think you could make a case for, But equally, if you're going to say that like Near, for instance, or Aptos or Sui are blue chips, then you're sort of tied to saying that certain DeFi protocols in and of themselves are blue chips as well. Like a lot of those Ethereum-based DeFi projects are definitely blue chips if you consider, just in terms of like the development they have around them, they have as much as some of those L1s, is the truth. Which is not to do down those L1s, it's probably to speak volumes of certain DeFi ecosystems that really are doing exciting stuff. But I think, in my mind, undoubtedly, Sui Aptos Near are blue chips.
Okay.
So, here's a question for both you guys as investors before we wrap up. It When you invest, are you tied to certain ecosystems? So I know that you guys will both do deals on Ethereum or Ethereum Layer 2s and Solana, for instance. If a near protocol deal came across your desk, would you be looking at it purely as, we're assessing the quality of the protocol that like you would if you saw a Solana or Ethereum project? Or are you talking a little bit, an investment committee and stuff about the risks or benefits to investing in
There's a
an old,
platform risk.
yeah,
That's one of the
platform?
risks in crypto. There's always a platform risk. So actively, there are certain ecosystem we look for, we are bullish on. So from a top-down filtering perspective or funneling perspective, like okay, Monad, Berachain, these are the upcoming ecosystem. It could be higher, better play on, let's say, some of the like crypto in itself, bigger call option to be in the money. But we, let's say, certainly will not discount the near deal if it comes to our desk and bottom up, it's really good. So by bottom up, I mean the valuation is good, they're doing something groundbreaking, and they understand that there is that platform risk, right? So we wouldn't discount them, but actively, there are few ecosystem that we'll have our own bias on because we feel like the dApps right now will have cheaper valuation, but once these L1s launch, they could trade at a premium or basically do interesting composable stuff within the ecosystem. So I think that's how I think. Uh, I would never discount a bottom up deal if somebody is doing something interesting.
Cam, carry on. Do you
No,
think in a similar kind of way?
no, we only invest in Algorand ecosystem projects.
Oh, well, of course. I mean, that's the most exciting one for sure over the next 24 months, I'd say. Hey, they came out with Did you see the advert? The Algorand advert the
I
other
thought
day?
that
I
advert was
thought it was
really
pretty
good.
good.
It was a good advert. It was it was clever. They just picked a different issue for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana, which
They got
ironically
so
showed
much
what
slack
blue
for that
chips.
though.
Yeah, but they got attention. Like that was the first
It's
time we'd
crypto
report
Twitter,
about
man.
them.
This is the thing. It's crypto Twitter.
Yeah.
Crypto Twitter faded. Dawn, not coin.
Yeah, but Algorand, I think they had some early issues, which I think have haunted them ever since. Like they had they were in one of the best positions ever from a funding and narrative and timeline standpoint, and sort of dropped the ball there pretty dramatically, I think. But equally, it worked as a marketing strategy. It was the first time in probably weeks, if not months, that we had mentioned Algo explicitly or done a story on Algo, and it got us writing about them for sure. So
Still
clever
a
decision.
unicorn. I mean, I'm just looking at the market cap and
Yeah. Well,
LTV.
this was
It's
what I was going to
1.5
ask.
billion.
Is because Mehdi, you said that you would not shy away from a near ecosystem project. Now, near the token itself, I think has a market cap of like 7 or 8 billion. But what is the single biggest ecosystem token on near, and how big is it? That's the
I've
question.
seen I've seen few account abstraction deal, but it has to be good bottoms up. I personally invest in Aurora, which was one of the shards of Near doing
Yeah,
EVM
yeah,
L2.
it's EVM.
But
Yeah,
it depends on deal by deal cases. The issue with platform risk is exchanges would not support it, so it becomes really difficult. The liquidity will be low. So I'll give you one observation. Why do projects launch NFTs on Ethereum versus, let's say, Immutable? Even though both have marketplaces, both can support NFT. Ethereum has way more liquidity and exchange support, whilst and on ramps and off ramps. IMX doesn't have that to that degree. So I think similar risk here. So let's say with Near, if you have an amazing deal, if they're launching on something, let's say Solana versus Near, that deal has to be lower valuation, better vesting, and trying to do more de-risking than, let's say, Solana project. So I think those are like some of the nuances, and they really need to have a reason why they're launching on Near. Maybe one of the reasons why they're launching on Near is maybe because they wanted to own the whole shard, or maybe they wanted to do some interesting AI stuff and wanted to distribute like BD effort from um, the co-founders of Near. So if they have a unique reason, why not? But typically that hasn't been the case.
fair enough. Fair enough. Thanks everyone so much for joining. I hope you've enjoyed our latest episode. Just a reminder to say that nothing was in any way intended to constitute financial or legal advice in any way. Everything is opinions, subjective in nature, so please don't take anything too seriously.